Bernie Dohrmann, founder of CEO Space, one of the most remarkable human beings I've ever met. Known Bernie for more than 20 years, and I never cease to be amazed at the ideas he comes up with to help business people be the best they can be, and more importantly, how business can help society be the best it can be. Bernie Dohrmann, listen carefully. You're going to learn something.
My personal source of happiness is this concept of moving governments and right down to individuals in what I call the mother of all viruses on the human brain, moving from competition to cooperation. We believe that competition is a virus that's infected the human mind, just like any virus on a computer. And Bill, we believe that is what is holding humanity back. And if I don't know, because the film, of course, has time limits, but if I can take a minute or two and describe 3 pyramids. So I want you to imagine 3 pyramids. And, you know, I want to draw it for you so you can see it. For 5,000 years, we've been in competitive capitalism. And we use fear and punishment and all human diversity. We have different religions, different races, different faces. I mean, from Rome to Greece to now, we punish diversity between us in everything competitive. And we worship money. If you have money, whether you're moral or integritous, we give you deference because you have money. And we bow, we stop talking. I won't talk to you, I'll talk to the guy that has more money because Warren Buffett walked in. Is he a good man or not won't matter. Warren is, but if that's the issue. Then we have, in the Industrial Revolution, the compression of competitive capitalism exploited people. And 1% of the population had the wealth that 99% combined didn't have. And so it was so disproportionate, they invented communism and socialism to correct the problems of competitive capitalism because it wasn't working. It didn't create full partnership for the world. And so then they created competitive bureaucracy without knowing it. And power was what they worshiped. Where are they in the competitive bureaucracy? And competitive bureaucracy was worse fear and punishment, worse exploitation, and you couldn't get toilet paper to the wealthy. Couldn't even get them to the wealthy. Because as a system of organizing people, a family, a community, a state, a nation, a region, a company, organizing humans along competition lines is toxic for our health. It is, if you want to tap the source is not schizophrenic. The source is not arguing with itself. The source is a love sublime. And the source, let's imagine that there are angels and that there's legions. You can't see the end of them. They're so massive. And you're looking at an assignment to make the next David's Psalm. So we could sing that for the Lord as the golden doors open. Do the angels make that psalm in the time allotted in brutal, tribal, warlike, unbelievably cruel, personally mean, and even the unborn generation are coming up with this step on the ladder before the best friend steps on your face competition? That's how they create the psalm for the Lord? Or do they do it in unconditional cooperation and love and praise and celebration? All the differences are celebrated instead of punished. That's where we get into cooperation. But at the top of that pyramid, we worship integrity. And money and power are held in check at the bottom of the system as humble servants. And the only way you can get there is organizing humanity in cooperation. And I believe the final revolution for humanity, the bloodless revolution, is in the mind, and it's the transformation element, the missing mechanism of cooperation capitalism. Cooperative capitalism is totally reportable, totally accountable, totally transparent, and has no secrets. And we have much more in full partnership and wealth. We've also known, as we've installed in major companies, we've taken companies like 3M and moved them from competition processes to cooperation processes. The difference in performance when you're in a cooperation company is unbelievable. And 3M has won the Excellence Award over and over, has moved up the ladder of the Fortune Group, has had so much recognition for its cooperation procedures, but you just can't break through in competitive dog-eat-dog departments and silo management with humans on fear and punishment like you do in celebration. Everybody would rather go to work in a celebration company than a fear and punishment company. But we have to do that with governments. And so my greatest joy, Bill, is working with the world leaders now to change the governments. With 12 laws, we have a cooperative nation. And go back to John Kennedy, where some people see the impossible and say that could never be. And John Kennedy said, I see the impossible and say, why not? And so I don't think it's impossible. I think the mother of all viruses is competition on the human brain. And once we illuminate the virus and know we have it, we can begin to associate in our friendships, in our business relationships, in our teams with cooperative thinkers. And what happens is you detoxify your family, your workplace, your community, your adventures in life. And so I just believe there are two states now. The competitive state of mind, which is dying, and the cooperative state of mind, or waking up, which is expanding. And so the source is bringing in cooperation. And the cooperation revolution is what your book is about, and it is the front point of the spear that is taking the thought leaders of this planet and empowering all of us to think and be prosperous, not to think and grow rich, where we have billions reading a book and no one gets rich, but having people read, tapping the source, read this book and become abundant. I mean, and it's not that many pages, and you become abundant because the secrets, the missing mechanism, you've got the missing mechanism. And we don't have time. It's quick to read this. But I've read this with I'm underlining, I'm writing in the margin. I've read it 5 times. I read it, it took me 5 hours to read 3 pages. But the reason is it's so condensed with what's in there. I mean, I look at this truly as the first new holy book of Revelation that's come out in the last 1,000 years. This is important as the Quran. This is important as, the Torah. It's as important, really, and I know I don't want to be sacrilegious to the Bible, but I think it is the Bible in a different way, and I think it's so important for us because we need to step into this cooperation. I've looked for what is the virus removal tool, the McAfee virus removal tool, the Norton 360, and I realize you Apple users had it right all along, but tapping the source, it is the virus removal tool. Everything that teaches us about competition and competitive processes is wrong. We have coached the Super Bowl teams. You have Dave Austin on here, and our coaching of Super Bowl teams, I just spoke at the Super Bowl last year to the major athletes who make the big bucks. And our teams always win. And we told the owners this concept. We teach the teams months before the game because when you're a young person, you're going out to these games, you're making $15 million a year, there's 1 billion watching. It's intimidating. That crowd goes nuts. You go on there. I mean, you can be psyched up like an animal, but I mean, it's intimidating. We don't have intimidation in our teams. We tell them that on Super Bowl day, they were going to go and display in the greatest adventure ever with a mechanism called the other team that they need to have on there so they can display it. Cooperation the world has never seen before. And their cooperation is undefeatable, and it only knows victory. And you celebrate the other team for helping you show the superior cooperation. If for any reason their cooperation was better, you go celebrate them and tell them how great their teaching was and what you learned from them and how their game helped your game to be better next year. And you celebrate them. You don't even feel disappointed. And they go out fearless. They go out calm. They go out with a kind of cooperation commitment that they just know their game is going to be victory. And it has nothing to do with the other team other than the team's a mechanism to show it off. That's how the sports used to be played in what we call the Olympics. That's how the Olympics started. It was a celebration of humanity in cooperative community. It wasn't a vicious competition of defeat. In competition, I beat you, Bill, and you're in tears, and I go and have a warm meal and I celebrate that I beat you. In cooperation, if I came out ahead of you, I reach back and help you do better next time. If you get ahead of me, you reach back and help me next time. That's what we should have always been doing with the unborn generation. We've taught them an error, a virus. We've taught them and infected them wirelessly with our high bandwidth, and we get reinfected all the time. Competition in every form is the center of everything all of these works are talking about. Competition is the issue of separating yourself from the source. Cooperation is unity with the source. Competition is disenfranchisement from the source. If you want to get all the layers of the onion, You can't fix all these problems. You keep trying to fix them in a competition environment. You have to detoxify the environment and get your bucket so you're in clean water, clear water. I was just from the Caribbean. I just flew in from Jamaica. And the kids were saying, why is the water so blue? Why is the water so clear here in the Grand Caymans? Why is the water so blue here, Dad, as we're diving down in these wonderful locations? And I said, because these waters are source waters. And you want to be in source waters, Bill. And source waters have detoxified the competition cloud. Then you can work with fears, speed bumps, hold blocks, blocks. Then you can make the secret come into your life because, you know, as you said, 300 million have seen The Secret and they don't get the prosperity and abundance they want in their life. And they don't get what we call velocity, acceleration, and momentum, or VAM. Velocity, acceleration, and momentum. VAM comes as soon as you get rid of the virus and you move into cooperation. And that happens in a flash. As soon as you decide, I see the virus and I will be around those. What happens when you see people that stay in competition and they solve problems competitively? Terror is a mind pollution. It's a pollution of the mind. And it's not about religious conflict or theoretical conflict. In other words, the Taliban, just while we're making our film, has taken a 19-year-old girl and a 25-year-old young man, and they eloped because they love each other, and they brought the village and their family together and stoned them to death. They made a circle and took rocks and stoned those young people to death because they had the highest form of human expression. They loved each other. She was holding him bleeding and said, it doesn't matter because on the other side we'll still love each other. And what was happening was that thought form of the Taliban don't need to change 96. It's so interesting how they believe. I just read the Holy Quran again, and I wanted to see if there was anything in it that said that you should stone those young people. And the Holy Quran says, to my Muslim friends and brothers, it says that the time that Moses came down and the people had made a calf and had done another rejection of God, certainly much worse than these two young people falling in love, Moses grabbed his brother by the hair, Aaron, who allowed it to happen, pulled him over in front of the whole group, and got on his knees and prayed for God's mercy to forgive them everything that had happened to them and to allow them to go forward from there. He didn't say stone Aaron. They didn't stone the people that made that calf. And I asked the Taliban, every difference between us, all our differences, tell me about your food, your music, your dress. Tell me about your business and your dreams. Tell me what you're doing next. It's so interesting. It's so fascinating. Teach children not to hate differences and punish differences. Teach children to celebrate differences, and it's so interesting. Keep your religion, keep your orthodoxy, keep all of your rules, but change the tone button just a little bit. And if they run off to get married, grab them by the hair, like it says in the Quran, and ask the Lord to forgive them. Don't stone them to death. I think you can actually get more of what you're looking for by cooperating than competing. If you compete, you'll never actually get what you want because people won't embrace the air. They won't embrace that air, and you never get what you want.
Yep.
Competition is bad in all forms and all mechanisms, and the language of competition is why we don't break through. It isn't okay to have a hybrid of it. Mm-hmm. So you must come from the angle on the tennis game. Everything that you want is a better game player that is your mentor and brings your game by leadership to higher levels. We all want mentorship in cooperation. And they're not trying to beat you, they're trying to make your game better. That's the best game. That's when you really have fun even when you lose. And you gain so much from it and your game became better and you go have a drink at the bar and you're grateful to the person that helped you mentor. That's not competition. Now, in the competition languages, etc., some individuals, living things die hard, Bill, and competition is a living virus. It's like all viruses, it's alive in our brains. That virus, that wrong thought form, is something that is very precious to people. They lock in and it is important. They believe that competition creates better goods, better services, faster for all of humanity, and those processes are the way that we should organize ourselves. That is what I call the great lie. Now, I'll give you an example. There are 1.2 billion, while you come with tapping the source, that will die this year while they're reading the book of starvation under the age of 30, screaming with swollen bellies all over this planet. And in there are all the people you write about. The John Astronaut babies are in there. The Bob Proctor babies are in there. The next Jack Canfield is in those babies that are starving this year. Now, we have silos all over the Western nations in Asia and the EU and here, storing food not for famine. And we have more than enough food to feed all of the 1.2 billion. They would all be alive. We have plenty of resources to distribute it. And we let it rot for 7 years, and then we plow it in the ocean. And we do that competitively to support and subsidize wheat prices. And we also, in the competitive system, pay farmers to not grow food at all. And those 1.2 billion die. What is that system of human organization? It's competitive. Competitive capitalism. What do you call that allows 1.2 billion to die this year that don't have to die at all? I call that, for human beings, insane. It is an insanity, and it's because of the competitive virus. Now, some people are open to, and they move along, like you said, and they're what we call waking up. They're moving toward cooperation. They're moving up, slip back, move up, and they get finally into cooperative thinking groups. You have to associate around cooperative thinkers, and your virus gets removed. You know, I created CEO Space to be a community to remove the virus permanently by living in a cooperative community. So it's of choice, people come into it. But the head of Nokia of Europe and the head of Memorex and the largest companies in the world come through this now to build their businesses cooperatively because they make more profit. They get better bottom line results. But there are those that love competition. They want to stay in it. They like the victory of it. They believe in it. And it's proven by math, by computers. John Nash of the Beautiful Mind won a Nobel Prize for proving that the theory of economic formation, Adam Smith's theory of economics in the 17th century, was wrong in its formulas and math. It's totally wrong. Totally. And the governments of the world are all operating on it. It creates this cycle: perpetual meltdown, crash, because of greed and abuse, and then war. And the only cooperation we get is after the savagery of the war for a very short time, and then we go into greed again, and meltdown, and war again. And we've been doing that for 5,000 years. The only way to break the cycle is to organize ourselves with cooperation in cooperative capitalism, with its transparency and no secrets. And if we don't build that kind of world government, we are going to annihilate this planet. Well, I think that 55% of the high school students of the United States are dropping out of high school before they finish to join the entrepreneur experience. I think they're starting businesses, and they're getting in with buddies that are starting businesses, and they don't think they're learning anything from school. They think that God invented search, and they can find it on the internet. So once they read and have math, school becomes disempowering to them. They don't want to join the competition system. So 55% are dropping into cooperation by themselves. They're making the new cooperation world. And when they vote, the young people got it. They want their country back. So they never elect an incumbent, because they'll never send anybody up to office except for 4 years. And now we have public servants. And they always look for cooperative candidates, cooperative thinkers, out-of-the-box thinkers. But they're looking for cooperative thinkers that won't be competitive. And they're voting. They're coming in record numbers back into the system. I have great hope because of these young people. They're inventing the next, look at Facebook, Google, look at the magic of YouTube and the shrinking implosion of the world that's come from the minds of these youngsters who have changed the way we Twitter and communicate. We push and bang, it's all over the world. Iran can't control its own government because they can Twitter and they can communicate from block to block. And you can't hide what they're doing in suppression. The suppression of competition doesn't work anymore because cooperation opens it up and it's illuminated. You see it all over the world. You haven't known what to label it. You haven't known what to call it. We are the thought leaders of the planet. We have undone this onion for 45 years. At the source is competition. It's what brings us to our Godhead. It's what brings us to the source itself. Tapping the source is a simple, what do you have to do first? Know you have a virus. It's the most important conversation. Talk all the time about, are we solving the problem competitively or cooperatively? Let's find a cooperative solution. Let's find a cooperative solution. Are we celebrating our diversity or are we starting to punish it? Let's celebrate diversity. Everything's interesting. Don't ever get into a thing where you start to buy in. There's a buy-in that someone is superior. For instance, if I unzip you, how are you made in the image and likeness of God? when you tap the source? Do you think your God has two nose holes and picks his nose or her nose? God in you are a breathing orb of light in which love expands. You only have two free will options. Love contracts or love expands. You are a breathing orb of light. If I took your body off, you wouldn't be fat, thin, male, female. You would be a spirit. You would never not, as you looked around 1,000 people, spirits, unzipped, you would never fail to love them all, seeing God in every one. You would never take one and say, well, that one has a Beamer. That one has a PhD from Harvard. That one's over this one because that spirit makes more cash money and deposits it at Wells Fargo. You'd never put that spirit over another spirit. There'd be unconditional love for all the spirits. Now, what we want is to make that happen in our families, our communities, our states, and our nations, so that we can have a world that allows full partnership, that allows the adventure of this planet to move forward to longevity, protecting the planet from incoming events and discovering the stars and repopulating the planet with its regeneration. We will always pollute the planet if we are in competition. Let me give you a byproduct of competition. In the year your book is coming out, they passed laws, and said you can't dump toxic chemicals anymore. Arsenic, selenium, some of the most long-life, most toxic human substances that are out there from mining, steel mill manufacturing, chemical companies. And so what they did when they could no longer, it was a felony, they go to jail, they took them and mixed them and put them into fertilizer as stuffers. And they put about half a bag of fertilizer on average, 30% nationwide. 500 billion tons now in a short period of years has been dumped on our food stocks and will stay there for 100 years concentrated and going in our cattle, and it's not even labeled. There isn't one fertilizer sack that has all the toxic chemicals that are in it now. Who would think that you would take that kind of toxicity and poison and get it on our food stocks without telling anybody or letting anybody know? And the government does nothing, no one goes to jail, and they have free distribution to the stuffer of fertilizer, bringing fertilizer down, keeping food price low while they're killing us. And I'm saying, how can that exist? It only exists because we have competitive thinking. If you have cooperative thinking, integrity is at the top. You're always checking against integrity. You could never do it. If money's at the top, you'll always do it. It breaks down. You can never get your integrity when money's at the top and integrity is held at check at the bottom of the pyramid. You have to have the final human revolution. And the illumination is to get rid of all the sidebar conversations because they're symptomatic. When we get to the bottom of the source and tapping it, to be children of God at one in union, we have to celebrate every kind of diversity between ourselves. We have to have a different recognition and reward system for playing with each other. And we have to always check into solutions that are dynamic and cooperative in nature. There isn't any competition. If Coca-Cola has a bigger market share, it studies at Pepsi why their cooperation is working so well and how they could be as cooperative to get their market share up. They don't look at it competitively. It's a look. It's an appearance. It's a buy-in to the virus. There isn't any competition. There's enough for everyone to be powerful and stable and to offer quality. And it's just a matter of serving humanity in the highest possible good. And as you do that, you're unstoppable. Competition companies are all dying. There's books like Break from the Pack by Oren Harry that define that competition is dying. If you look at The Big Short by Michael Lewis, The Big Short defines what just happened. You want to know why the crash happened? During the short, the people making billions keep asking, this can't be legal. We can't be allowed to do this, can we? They couldn't believe it. It's so immoral. But they couldn't say no to it because they were making billions. It'll never change. You'll always have an elite group that is suppressing and advantaging over a group that I beat you and you lost, I won. If you want that, keep doing it. But what's the source of that? And should we organize differently? Bill, we're in a country in America in which people from all over the world came. They came from every nation, Bill. And when they got stuck in the place that was going to have terrific snowstorms and hardship, and they were just one wagon, they had from nowhere and they didn't know what was going to happen in May and the spring. A circle of 40 wagons come. And these people came from 40, 50 miles away by wagon with their kids and livestock. And they formed that circle and came around that wagon and explained to them they were their neighbors. And they stayed for months, 4 or 5 months. And they cut down the lumber, they cleared the rocks, they did a barn raising. They sunk the well, they put the fences up, they left some breeding stock, and they built their home. And I submit, when they left in the dust in the fall, and they waved their hats in the dust before they went over the knoll, and the couple with their couple kids on the porch of their new house was crying because thank you wasn't enough. At that point of cooperation, maybe that was the last time a generation really knew what it meant to be American. What the spirit of this infection called freedom that we want to sweep the world with was all about. And so how do we get back to that? We open the conversation in every country on earth that cooperative capitalism brings us together in full partnership. It's the new way we have to be together, and all of us are revolutionaries, and we all play a role in it as we tap the source and begin to express our genius to each other cooperatively, so the maximum number of people benefit from our lives. And as we go into that, where we're really every day, we're trying to have the maximum number of people benefit from our lives. There's no competition to that. Our lives thrill us. We have thrilling lives. And when we meet other people doing it, we're thrilled by them. Look at today, what happened today. As we learned a little bit about how we're finishing the frosting on tapping the source. And we cooperated, you and I. And look what happened. Miracles happened. In just the shortest time, if we were competing, would I have ever shared as I shared today? Would I ever got on the phone and phoned those absolutely superstars of the world and brought them in to tapping the source, saying how important it was they get in? Did I want anything? Did I ask them for anything? Did I ask you for anything? It was totally cooperative. Totally cooperative. What happens when we do that? We both go up faster. It helps both of us beyond anything we could ever do competitively. On any labeling, packaging, there is no good competition. Get rid of the notion. Just come from a different, how is what I'm doing expressing itself cooperatively? It's always expressed actually cooperatively. And you are a giant walking in the redwood forest of giants of cooperation. Jack Canfield is a cooperation redwood, taking cooperation with Chicken Soup for the Soul all over the planet and influencing 100 million spirits on this planet and healing them and showing them the new way. And Jane Wilhite is a cooperation giant redwood. And the tallest of them, Bob Proctor. I mean, Bob Proctor on your film, his words are a historical event. It makes tapping the source a historical event. He just had a virus eat his heart valve. At 75, he was going into open heart surgery. They did not think he'd survive. He was massively infected. He had huge fever. If he had gone on the plane, it would have killed him. Mary Morrissey saved his life. And as he goes in the gurney down to the operating with his wife Linda, he's texting me. I still have the text in my phone, which I'll show you. And if I wasn't on film, I'd get it, but I know it because I've read it so many times. But I was saying to him, Bob, don't worry. They have to do open heart surgery because you're serving humanity at such a level. Your cavity is not large enough to hold your heart. They have to enlarge the cavity because your heart's become too large. And he wrote back and said, no, Bernie, you've got that all wrong because you have the biggest heart in the world. They're operating on me, so my heart will be just like yours. I love you so much. And then Linda yanked the phone out of his hands. Now, when he got done and he got over that, and they took him off the massive post-operative stuff, his first thing that he did was come back to CEO space and teach before 1,200 people a few weeks ago. And I said, why did you choose us first? And he said, because wherever else I teach is my work. But when I come back to CEO space, I'm home. And we play the world together to change world governments. And I believe when Bob speaks about tapping the source, he is today the father of this entire work, and I think you have a historic event that everybody passes this on. Everybody gets this to 10 people. Everybody makes sure this is out beyond anything that has been issued before, because the secret is introductory and it helps us learn the truth. But the missing mechanism, otherwise you're trapped between speed bumps. Your car is trapped between speed bumps. And what I believe is you're driving, and you tell me if this isn't your truth, Bill. And people are in the secret and they're shaken. Maybe they traded up from a Volvo to a Jaguar and they got a 12-cylinder and they're going 140 now. And the car's shaking and the telephone poles are going by like a picket fence. And they have to pay much more attention because it's so much faster, and they have trouble with, they don't even have time for family and life, and they're not getting the wealth they wanted. They're not getting the joy they wanted. That real joy isn't coming. And you know, you asked me in the beginning of this, and we recut it, what was my greatest joy? And you wanted me to talk about my mission, but I said my greatest joy is my wife, September. And say, why is that? Because she's my cooperation partner. I need cooperation in my home. I don't want conflict and competition in my home. I've had that, and I couldn't change the virus. I tried to change the virus and make a difference, and I couldn't do it. And I am so grateful that I had the freedom to get away and bless the person, because I can't teach them. They're not teachable, and I'm not their teacher. I can't get the virus removed. So there are people you just can't get the virus out. They like their competition. And say it's toxic, you fight all the time, you don't have joy, you don't have peace. To have years and years of peace and joy at home, say perfection can be had. You can have that. You know, it's so important. And I look at the secret, and you and I both said, you know, what's missing? And tapping the source, Bill, is where you beam them to the Starship Enterprise, and you take them to warp 4 until you come out with the other products you're going to release next, where you'll go warp 6 and warp 8, because it'll scare them too much if they go that fast at first. But I'll guarantee you, after tapping the source, compared to the secret where you're pedal to the metal and you're shaking the car apart and you don't get to your destination, once you go warp 3 with tapping the source, you will never ask for the keys to the car again. When you go in cooperation, you said that 3 or 4 times, I noticed, while you were talking to some of these superstars. You said there's no accident because there was a synergy. And it's like the third confirmation that you're supposed to be with that one or this one. And that's what happens in cooperation. I was talking to a person today who comes to our programs, and it was on a radio interview nationwide. And he was the host, but he was also a graduate of our CEO space. And he said, you know, he goes, I just thought it was too good to be true. And he goes, I was there, and I know you came back in '93. I mean, you're like a veteran, but he said, you know, when you're in this cooperation festival, he goes, you're in the buffet line, or you're over here at a spot, and just the exact person comes in that you need that's just so precise. And he goes, it's just like a miracle. And the thing is, that's how we are supposed to live. As soon as we get rid of the competition, those miracles start popping all over the place. But you've got to get to the, in other words, if everybody's talking about the force shield so we can go warp 8, and they're all talking about the way to get to the bridge and all sorts of different ways that we work the Starship, you still have to know what the antimatter drive that makes it all work is. And that is the difference of competition to cooperation. And it's not only incorrect. Warren Buffett right now and Bill Gates are phoning the wealthiest 1,000 people alive. And they're asking them to charge into keeping whatever they want, which they couldn't spend in 5 generations, and the rest to give to charity strategically for the welfare of humanity. Now, they're getting a lot of, gee, I got to catch a plane, Mr. Buffett. Gee, I'm sorry, Mr. Buffett, I got some appointments, so think about that. They're not getting a good reception. They're only getting about 15–20% even continue the conversation. And they're trying to get cooperative wealth giving out to the planet. They're leaders of the cooperation revolution as the great wealth bearers. And we need to change this thinking for full partnership for the world. Our system is broken. That is not an equitable solution. We cannot let these billions die.